Hello and welcome to another Daily Muppet. Today I want to talk about this striker situation, what a disaster this is becoming, and how frustrating it is. I also want to briefly discuss some outs, reiterate some points on the Jong situation, and really kind of go through the entire possibility and timeline of what's gone on the striker hunt on Martial, Sesko, Ronaldo, and tying it all back to what happened in May and Joel Glazers. Today's video is once again sponsored by OneFootball. We've teamed up with OneFootball to help bring you the best in football news. If you're looking to keep up with everything going on these days, which is a lot, download OneFootball today for free. Their easy-to-use app is clean and attractive. You can see the latest transfers, the top news curated for you, see match scores live, stream without subscription, and so much more, all built and personalized for your interest and your teams. Click the link in the description below today to download the OneFootball app for your iPhone or Android and get all of your football news, aside from the Muppetiers, of course, all in one place. So first, let's talk about what came out last night from Laurie Whitwell and some of the info that I have on this and I've said in the last video, but also want to talk about in general. What came out last night was that United are set to continue talks for Sesko, but again, the claim of the fee being too high is a challenge for the deal. And the truth of it is, when you start to dig into this, as I was discussing the other day, it all comes down to Ronaldo, which is actually, as is revealed by Laurie Whitwell, has everything to do with Joel Glazers, and not much to do with Ten Hag and his desire for players and what he needs and wants to be back. Specifically had stepped in, and that it was forcing Ten Hag to utilize Ronaldo rather than to let him go. The insinuation made in there is that there was a lot of people who would be willing to let Ronaldo go, but that there were Joel Glazers essentially stepping in on it, and that Ten Hag will likely have to make do with Ronaldo whether he wants to have him there or not. This is, if you look at this situation, it's not surprising. Ronaldo is very high commercial value, and that's the value he has to the club, and that is what the value that Joel Glazers is looking at. What you have to realize also is it means, Joel Glazers wants him, if you look at what it means, Joel Glazers wants him to use Ronaldo and not buy a striker rather than spending the money on the striker. This is a typical cost-saving exercise. I mean, in some ways it's silly because you got enormous wages for Ronaldo, but he brings in that commercial value. This is a purely financial decision that is overriding the manager's wants, needs, and desires. And that's the truth of it. I've said for a long time now, for weeks and weeks and weeks, the public stance is no sale. It keeps coming from the club, while behind the scenes, Ten Hag and John Murtaugh would absolutely let Ronaldo go, but they are once again being overridden from positions above, and that is incredibly disheartening. It's frustrating that it's still going on, all of this, because this is the concerns I've mentioned about the whole De Jong situation, whether the club has changed, or if there are lies, or if there are things happening, or there are things that are not being approved from the board and above, that are holding things up that they will never tell anyone about. Maybe, and it's disheartening when you continue to see the interference of these people in the club and in every little decision when it comes to players. It's funny, this isn't like a beef or something like that, but it's a simple fact that I have to call things out as I see them, and I've called certain things out for a long time. There's been insinuations from people that the management steps in on saying that players like Maguire, other players, have to play. Meanwhile, the same people have been backing and saying that Ronaldo has to play. It's the opposite. Management from above, the board, are the ones overriding and saying Ronaldo has to be here. It's Eric that wants him gone. And that's where it's like, you have to get past personal agendas on things and on players and on all of that. What Eric wants is what's important. What the manager wants is what's important. And even what Murtaugh wants is what is important. And he didn't want this. Neither of them want this situation. In May, Eric believed Ronaldo would stay, that he could rely on him. But Martial wanted out, and his agent was looking for buyers. He wanted a striker badly, and United had explored Nunez all the way back even into April, confirmed by Lowry that they could have pursued a deal at that time, that it could have been done, as I was saying for months, for Darwin Nunez all the way back into April. And what happened? Eric was told in May that due to the cost of the deal, he had to choose between De Jong and seeing the cost and what De Jong would cost before moving on to any other deals to be getting done, or he could get Nunez. So he chose De Jong, which is fair and is acceptable, and it's a sensible choice. That was never the issue. The issue is, why did he have to make that choice in the first place? He should never have had to, and I've always disagreed with that because I knew how important this was. At the time, he only had Ronaldo to rely on. Then, of course, Eric pulls a rabbit out of the hat, convinces Martial of his quality and use, helps restore his confidence, gets him firing in preseason, and gets himself a reliable striker. But do not get this mistaken. He was forced to do this. It was not his call. It was not Murtaugh's. In an ideal world, they would have bought Nunez. He would have tried to help on with Martial anyway, but he did it. He had to, and he did it, and that's great. It's a testament to his ability as a manager to motivate and inspire, and I think that's important. Martial's had a great preseason. I rated him an A yesterday, and I think he's incredibly important. But then what happened at the same time? Then Ronaldo wanted out. So now you have the same issue again that you had in May. One reliable striker and 4 senior forwards available totally. And it gets worse because Martial now, of course, has an injury. Ronaldo's not fit, and he still wants to go. You've got no striker. And Martial is a player who he's. I'm excited about what he can bring. That he's motivated. That Eric Ten Hag is turning things around with him. But he's always had these injury issues for some years now. And that is a concerning situation, to be reliant on him alone. And so now with Martial injured, Ronaldo not fit, wants to go, you've got no striker. It's a frustrating situation, and it's a bullshit way of running a club. I've been annoyed about this since May. I've talked about it so much for a reason, because I've insisted that it was being driven from above. United have not had 2 strikers to rely on the entire summer. And as I've said many times now, in preseason and with the players we have, I really rate Martial, Sancho, and Rashford. But the fall off is huge. And the Ronaldo situation is an unnecessary problem that could have been dealt with 6 weeks ago. As it stands right now, the most likely outcome is Eric is forced to work with Ronaldo and Martial and hope that Martial can stay healthy to utilize him how he wants, which has unfortunately been a struggle in recent years for Tony. Right now, talks are set to continue over Sesko, but when you see this Joel stuff, there's always that problem sitting there under all of it. Will he approve the money? They're putting out right now from the club, they don't want to pay that kind of money. Why? Because he wants to sit there and keep Ronaldo and not spend the money. It is a money-saving exercise. They could let Ronaldo go and buy Sesko, and at least you'd have these 4 good players. You'd have a striker lined up, in place that could be the striker of the future for next summer. And it's just very frustrating. I've been insisting for some time that a striker still makes more sense than anything else. And people will say we need wing depth, and I understand it. But you don't need that as much as you need strikers. Strikers have been a focal point in a lot of Ten Hag's systems. And then when you look at the players and profiles that we have, Martial can play out wide. Even Ronaldo can both play out wide. Bruno and Eriksen have played out wide in their career. A striker is a much more specialized position. If you sign a striker, you can push Martial left or right. You can push Sancho to either side. You can push Rashford to either side. You get flexibility and options for covering multiple positions. If you don't sign that striker, you do not have that flexibility. You do not have that ability. And the striker situation is also where you have the least stable players. Rashford was always going to stay. Sancho was always going to stay. And then you have through the youth, Ahmad, Pellistri, Alenga, Garnacho. I'm not saying they're all ready. I'm not saying they're all good enough, but you have so many. We have no strikers outside of Martial and Ronaldo, and neither of them, because of injury and because of wanting to leave and age, can be relied on a day-to-day basis. It's such a big thing, and Eric knew this. That's why he wanted a striker so badly, and he's been thrown under the bus, not by Murtaugh, but from the top. And that's the fact of it, and that needs to be called out as much as is possible. I think it's going to hurt us as much or more than anything else. I've said that the striker thing is as big a problem as the deep midfield position, maybe more so. And at the very least, Fred's done a really good job, and he's like an Iron Man. He rarely gets injured and is probably the fittest player at United. There was a time he played like in a 2-month span, like 12 games, 90 minutes. 12 or 14 games, 90 minutes in all competitions. The guy's, really fit. And obviously that's a concern, but that you only have him, you kind of may have technically Martinez who can cover beneath that. That helps a little bit in terms of that flexibility of position. And so it's a problem, but this forward thing could be a much, much bigger problem. Right now, I'm more worried about the forward position. I think with guys like Eriksen and Bruno and Van de Beek and such, and Fred, there's... So anyway, very frustrating. But, where it's at right now, I've seen this situation. I know our info is that Sesko talks will continue and that they're still working on it. So there's potential for something to happen here. I know Ten Hag needs a striker, wants a striker, and Murtaugh wants to get him one, but I'm just not that optimistic yet. What should have happened is that a top striker was signed in May, following Martial's resurgence and Ronaldo wanting out. What then should have happened is Ronaldo should have been let go, and a striker brought in 5 to 6 weeks ago. But it wasn't, because of the insistence from Joel Glazers and the top to not allow that to happen. So I'm not hopeful, because it's now confirmed as suspected that it all goes back to one man that throws off proper planning. And, this summer had a plan. Ten Hag knew it. Ten Hag wanted a striker. He wanted his midfielder, and he wanted that center back. He got at least Martinez in lieu of Timber. The midfield thing is still up in the air. I'll talk about that in a second. But he never got that striker. He obviously feels like his players can be flexible in different positions out wide, but not in the center. And I know he wanted Anthony too, so it's not that he didn't want a winger, but that striker was first. It was the first position. And it's only moved on to that right wing because he couldn't get the striker he wanted, and because he didn't get approval to even let either of the two in place go when he should have been able to. So I think this has potential to cause more problems than everything else. As I've said, at least in the midfield, Fred, Eriksen, Bruno, Van de Beek, and now even Martinez, who could potentially cover in there. One of the comments that was made about Martial was how he was an intelligent presser, pressed really well, pressing in the right moments, and that was part of his success in preseason. Ronaldo doesn't want to be here and is in the bottom 1% of pressers in Europe, so don't tell me he can play and it'll be the same system and the same setup and the same style that Eric wants to play. It matters. These things do matter. It's not that Ronaldo won't and can't score goals, but the way that he plays and is in a lack of pressing will change how Ten Hag wants to play, and that's unacceptable that that's been allowed from the management side of things. So my hope now is that the Martial injury pushes these talks forward for the striker and perhaps can get a deal through in attack to add a number as it is desperately needed. In other news, Jong, as I said in yesterday's video, United are still claiming confidence and assurances that once the wage issue is sorted, he will join, as Laurie Whitwell said last night. The Chelsea stuff sort of coming back that he's been offered by Barcelona because of whatever reason. But I'd assume they run into the same issue, as I said. I don't know what to make of it. They run into the same wage issue, so there's really no difference. United continue to claim this confidence, so if we can believe them, then so be it. Tella's off to Sevilla. Bailly and Jones may be the next out. Bailly seems really close to Roma. Jones has some interest in England from lower clubs, but the DC United stuff is real, and to me it's crazy if you won't accept that. So they're likely to go out. Williams, there's been some inquiries for him. I don't know anything about Ziyech. I imagine, though, that the situation is his agent has offered him to United given the situation, given the former links and the United walking away from Antony. So that's where things were at. That's all I've got for this video. I'll update you further on the talks with Sesko or if anything else changes on the other deals. In the meantime, it's really, I said the other day, it was really now is where the rubber meets the road on whether this window is bad or good. And with Martial's injury, it just got even more intense. So let's see what happens in the next few days. Thank you for watching. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. See you in the next one.